everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, Oracle and Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. So we're basically just finishing off the Empire comics, but I was originally just going to make this one video going from issue 23 to the end, but I realized that I missed the story, but it's okay because it's not super important, and it doesn't necessarily have to be placed before. There's nothing indicating that I can't place it here as I did, as what we're about to see. But also, the next big arc in the comics is something to do with the sins of the father, with Jabim. And I thought, considering it was mentioned, or they went to, I didn't watch it, but I know Jabim was at least mentioned in the new Kenobi show. And because that's such a big thing, I figured that I would just make a two-parter and finish off the rest of the Empire comics in the next video. And then, for one video, because there's only 16 issues, do all of the Rebellion comics in one sitting. But yeah, I don't have too much to talk about today. No spoilers or anything. It's all just comics. So I'm just going to talk about some things, and then we'll be on our way. Starting with Empire issue 1618. So these are the things I forgot about, but you don't necessarily have to put it in the past because there's nothing indicating that it has to be there. It's a decent Imperial story. Here we actually follow an Imperial, a guy that seems, kind of morally righteous for the most part. Think about, like Pelion from the Trilogy and onwards. He, is an honorable guy. A lot of the people in charge, they want to, just take the easy route, make all the stormtroopers do everything. We'll sit here and drink tea because we're here to give orders, not to help out, and you got the main character, and he's getting down and dirty. He's helping him clean up stuff. He's helping use a rope to pull something out. He's, inspiring the crew. And, the whole leader of this whole, mission, really appreciates him. But the stormtroopers on this planet get attacked by these native alien people. And so it kind of shows, the horrors of war, because, you see, a lot of stormtroopers dying. Normally you'd be like, I don't care. But then you're seeing it from this guy's perspective, and he's like, literally, I don't know if hours have passed, if minutes have passed. All I know is to keep fighting and staying alive. Right? And it gets to the point where the people in charge are dying, and the main leader tells them, I'm giving you my position. I need you to keep, whatever we can alive. And, then he's, trying to order people to do stuff, and you'll see, another stormtrooper die or something. And, your gut reaction is oh my god, you want to, take that in, and you want to, try to help out. But you can't help him. You have to just assume he's a lost cause and move on, because you have another 100 people you need to make sure, or try to make sure, get out alive. So there's a whole lot of stuff like that. But by the end of the story, he gets back to Coruscant, and because there are no witnesses really to his promotion, he was supposed to be the new commander that was given to him by his superior officer. But the superior officer died, and the only person who overheard him say that was one of the other people that don't like him. So they put him back to where he once was, but he's like, I know what I did, and I'll still get there someday. But anyway, it wasn't super crazy or anything, but it was a pretty decent little story of an Imperial side, which I wish we would have gotten more of in the Imperial comics, because the Empire comics, because most of it seems to be Rebellion stories, but it's called Empire. So this is one of the few stories where we actually focus on the Empire and get to see their side of things. I don't think I get as pissed off as Matt did in his original reviews of these stories. I do wish we would have gotten more of the Imperial side, just to have a comic series showing them as the good guys. We really didn't get that. We got Rebellion, basically, and then they're like, well, since we're only making Rebellion stories anyway, might as well make a separate comic series called Rebellion. But I don't know, it was pretty decent though. Moving on, we have issues 24 to 25. The rebels need a certain thing. but they need to get it smuggling wise. And who's the best guy for the job? Well, of course, Han Solo. Their most well versed smuggler, and so they get him to go on a mission with Chewie. I'm assuming Han meets this old fling that he used to know. Um, and the guy from issue 19 with the Falleen, the guy that Vader's like, you need to help me find the rebels, he returns. Um, and by the end of it, of course, Han and friends get out of it. But the guy from issue 19 does not. Without getting into spoilers, that's basically it. Issues 26 to 27. So, I'm going to say off the bat, if you don't like the prequels, you're probably going to be annoyed with these 2 issues. If you like the prequels, you're probably going to enjoy it. That's the thing I've kind of noticed with a couple other reviewers and stuff on YouTube, and then just people you talk to on the internet. If they're like, I'm an OT fan, I love the original movies, and then they meme on the prequels but don't actually like the prequels, then at any time the EU will reference it in the original trilogy, people get upset. Like, it's weird because people be like, oh yeah, I love the episode 3 novelization and the comics from the prequels, but I don't like the prequels themselves. But yeah, it just seems like people that don't really like the prequels, they'll be like, well, I like aspects of the EU because the EU did it better. Whatever, you wouldn't have those excellent comic books like the Battle of Jabim or anything like that if not for the prequels, so you're welcome. Anyway, if you like the prequels, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this one. Basically, it's nothing special, it's nothing crazy, it's a decent story, but I like when they do this sort of thing. It's the same reason that while I find Darkness rather boring a lot of the time, minus stuff with Jason, one of the things that I was really appreciated about the book, same thing with like Tatooine's Ghost, is integrating, because the reason the Bantam era, which is the era before New Jedi Order, before Del Rey took the rights back, we had all these stories post Return of the Jedi, and they never talk about Leia and Luke's mom or anything like that, because they couldn't. George Lucas wouldn't allow it. He said, you're not allowed to touch anything in the past. That is my domain in case I ever decide to make a prequel. But they would have come up with something had George Lucas allowed them to, but they didn't. So, Luke and Leia didn't really get to know their mom. I mean, I know Leia has that like one line in episode 6, but they never really knew their mother. So the idea that they could, in the Darkness trilogy, discover some things about their mother, discover some things about their father, it's nice to see prequel era stuff, information that we already know about as viewers, be shown to the original characters. I think that's cool. In the same way with Tatooine's Ghost being an excellent way to help Leia get over her anger and rage toward Darth Vader by showing him as a little boy on Tatooine like he was in episode 1. I love when they do stuff like that. It integrates the prequels to the original trilogy in a proper context to help bridge that gap for fans to go, oh, it's interconnected. They're not just ignoring it, and it's a way to give closure to some characters. Like Luke gets to see his mom in one of the stories. I think that's a big deal. But as for this story in particular, basically they find one of those derelict ships from episode 2 and episode 3 that I'm not a super big nerd, I apologize, but those ships that would carry the clone troopers. And so who does Luke meet? Well, a stormtrooper, or a clone trooper that's been abandoned on that planet for about 20 years, and he's been surviving on it. And so he's like, I'm gonna help, because he sees the stormtrooper. He's like, I am a designation this, let me come help you. And they start shooting at him, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's confused, and then he finds out that Luke Skywalker's helping the rebels, and he finds out that he's a Jedi, and he's like, well, I serve the Jedi, because he didn't get the order of Order 66 because his ship crashed down and all the communication stuff broke. So he's just been living on this planet for 20 years having no idea what's going on. He doesn't know if the Separatists have been defeated or what. And by the end of it, he ends up becoming intelligence for the rebellion. That's all. I know that there's not going to be any story with this clone trooper moving forward, or most likely not. It's just, hey, here's a stormtrooper. here's a clone trooper. They existed in the prequels. Now Luke has met one. Like it's as simple as that. It was a nice little prequel connection. Also, for talking about the issues in 24 and 25, it's not like a super big thing, but it has the Dugs. The Sebulba from episode 1 makes an appearance. Now that's a much smaller one, but that's still like a prequel connection because those aliens were not a thing in the original trilogy. Anyway, then lastly, we have issue 28. This is just a fun little Boba Fett one-shot. There's nothing much to it. Boba Fett's hired to do a mission. Most of it is literally just action. There's no dialogue. I mean, there is dialogue, but most of the comic is just action. And by the end, it's a nice little, or not nice, but it's a fun little ending to it, I guess you should say. It was a decent little tale. Nothing crazy, nothing grand, but it was fun. Thank your lucky stars that I don't do what Matt Wilkins did in his original series and do these issues like one by one or whatever, because we'd be here for an eternity. I do these in bulk, so it's a little bit easier to swallow, but still. And we're still quite a bit a ways away from episode 5, so shows you how crammed this era is. But starting with issues 29 to 30, and then also 32 to 34, we have the 5-issue series on the Shadows of the Father or whatever. It's the Jabeam arc, as we talked about in the last episode. So the rebels, of course, go to Jabeam. They want to help the Jabeam, they want to help the ones that want to stay, like, they don't want to join the Empire or anything, they want to be independent. Whereas you have the Loyalists that just want to live in peace, so they're willing to work with the Empire and stuff. But at every beginning section of each issue, it begins with a flashback to the past. So it begins with showing what we've already seen from the Republic comics that chronologically take place 20 years ago in universe. And we see Anakin. We see him choke out one of the Jabeam people, which, at least in terms of timeline-wise, in the EU, would have been the first time that Anakin used that Force ability, and it was kind of an accident because he was upset. So that's kind of a big deal for his character. It's the first time he's ever used Force choke on somebody. But he leaves, and then we see stuff that we didn't see from the Jabeam arc because we just left them, and so we get to learn what happened to them over time. But overall, like, even though yes, it kind of banks on the fact that you've read the Jabeam arc from the Republic comics, which were one of the best arcs of that entire series. But I think even ignoring that, I think this still tells a really good story. Like, there's a lot of Bantam era stories. Imagine if you didn't have the Republic comics and you just had this. Even if I didn't, have that story, I think this story still works, it holds its ground on its own, because I still think it tells a really good story, despite the fact that it is banking off of another great story. But it's a sequel to a good arc in the Republic comics. So, is it as good as Jabeam? No. But a lot of things in the Rebellion era aren't better than things in the Clone Wars era, at least comic book wise. The Clone Wars era, when it came to comics, was almost nothing but banger after banger after banger. They had very few misses. Whereas the Rebellion era has been more of a mixed bag overall. But still, I think, especially if you like those Republic comics with Anakin and everything, and you know what I'm talking about with the Battle of Jabeam and everything, I think this is a series you should definitely pick up. It's just really fantastic, dealing with, like, the son of the guy that gets choked out, with Luke himself. At this point, Luke still doesn't know, because that doesn't happen until Empire, knowing that Vader is his father. He knows, oh, well, because of this arc, oh, my father's made some mistakes or whatever. But he still wants to honor and be the best Jedi with no teacher currently that he can be, because he wants to make his father proud. And then also on the flip side, we have that juxtaposed with the kid of the guy who got choked out by Anakin. And we see him trying to not repeat the mistakes of his father, to, bring his people into a better world and all that. And I don't know, I thought the way it was done was just absolutely wonderful. And my only gripe, I guess, would be the art. Not that it's bad, it's just not my favorite. But other than that, I thought it was absolutely fantastic and well worth your time. Now, issue 31 has Vader going to this planet with a bunch of velociraptors, which I would say is silly, but we also have the Sissy-Rook, so it's fine, because the Sissy-Rook are basically velociraptors, but a different species that steal your soul or whatever. We'll get into that when I reread Truce Epicora, which is the first book to take place after episode 6. But they're doing their political machinations, they're assassinating people, blah, 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 blah. It's boring. This is apparently supposed to take place in between the Jabim arc, but why would you read that and then go back to a fantastic arc? So I just put it after, though it is showing like what Vader was up to, I guess, before he shows up in the Jabim arc. But it's not good. Issue 31 is pretty bad. I didn't care at all about anything going on. You can honestly skip this issue and you would miss nothing. It's not that good. Issue 35. It was so nice to see the KOTOR art again, because the person who wrote this issue was John Jackson Miller. So in this comic, basically, Vader aboards this ship and tells the lead guy to capture rebels, because he needs information about where the rebel base is, because they're still trying to find Hoth. And frickin' the officer said, "Oh, there's something wrong with the calculations or whatever. We ended up killing all the rebels. They go to another place. They end up killing the transport, Then they're supposed to, like, siege and capture this base, and they end up blowing up the base. And at this point, they're like, what the fudge is going on? Because this is clearly on purpose. And they find out that there was somebody on the ship that's in control of the turrets, and he's actually an Alderaanian. And he wanted revenge for what happened to his people. And so he thought if he could either, one, ruin this guy's career, make him be fired, or two, just delay them. I think it was a little bit of both, but delay them from finding it, because, I mean, the guy is kind of crazy, though, because he killed his friends in the Rebel Alliance, but it meant, they can't be tortured and give information about the Rebel whereabouts because they're dead, which I guess is a tactical move there. But at the end, Vader kind of praises him. He's like, had you not been a traitor, you could have been an excellent Imperial officer or whatever. And he seemingly goes to get torture or whatever. So, but it was a decent one. I like the art because I like the art in KOTOR, the comics that take place before the video game, which are also by John Jackson Miller. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. And then, last but not least, we have Empire issues 36 to 40. This is one big 5-issue arc. The rebels infiltrate this Imperial base. We have Luke, which is really the only movie character we have. We have a bunch of these other rebels we've never met before. One's even a Duro, and they're trying to rescue the... because at the end of the Jabim arc, one of the people that was a part of the Rebel Alliance gets captured and is supposed to be tortured to give information. So they go to rescue him in this series. But here's something that I didn't even notice when I was reading the earlier things. Maybe you would have known that if you're a super big nerd. I don't know, because there's no official name actually given to this person in the movie. In episode 4, we, Luke has childhood friends. One of them being Biggs, which we do meet at the end of the movie. One of the other ones is Tank. Tank was one of Luke's old childhood friends. And in a previous comic, I talked about an Imperial officer that this was like a one-off story where he was, all these aliens were attacking him. He had to take care of his men and all that, and it was really good. It showed like a really good, morally righteous Imperial officer that wanted to do the right thing. We get to this issue, and he sees Luke and says, "Luke, that's you." He doesn't get all the news out there. He doesn't know that Luke is a part of the Alliance. All he sees is Luke in his disguise and thinks that he was successful in joining the Empire like Luke had originally wanted to do. And Luke goes, "Tank?" But remember, he hasn't been called that for all the times that we've seen him thus far. So that was a big shock to me. I was like, oh, that's one of Luke's friends. And it led into a fantastic little arc with, he's like Pelion in a sort of way, because Pelion's like, I get you, like with the whole rebellion, but I can't defend or support that. There are problems within the Empire that need to be fixed, but the Empire's right. The Empire's righteous. This is where we should be at. And so he feels betrayed by his friend Luke, and he finds out that even Biggs had died as a rebel. And I don't know, man. This 5 issue arc was really cool. Plus, we get to see Luke with his lightsaber doing some cool tricks on the stormtroopers. Now, of course, he hasn't been trained by Yoda yet, but he has been doing some of his own, figuring stuff out. And I don't have too much of an issue with it, because it's not like he's fighting Vader or something, which he's already done in the Marvel comics from the 70s and stuff. But he's just fighting normal people, so I can understand him being, getting decent with the basics of it. So that was okay. But overall, yeah, this whole series was okay. The Empire series as a whole, I think it goes. I mean, I haven't read Rebellion yet, but it definitely goes for me. KOTOR, Legacy, the Republic comics. As of right now, Empire. Maybe Rebellion will beat it, but it's only 16 issues. So I don't know if it will manage to do so. But so far, that's my kind of ranking of the comics that have come out by Dark Horse and stuff. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. Up next, I'm basically just, since there's only 16 issues, I'm just going to talk about the Rebellion comics in one bulk. But basically, just think of it as Empire 2.0, because it's essentially just a continuation of that. But yeah, until next time, guys, may the Force be with you.